My name is Callie and I just turned 22 last month. The day I graduated with my accounting degree should have been perfect. Instead, at our celebration dinner, my father William clinked his glass, looked me dead in the eyes and laughed. "Well, Callie, you are officially old enough to pay rent or get out." The restaurant fell silent. I forced a smile while my heart crumbled. What nobody knew was that I had been paying bills for years already. If you are watching this video, let me know where you are viewing from, and hit that like and subscribe button to follow how I handled this heartbreaking situation that changed everything. Growing up in our faded blue two-story house in suburban Pennsylvania, I always thought we were just an average American family. My father William worked as a sales manager at a local car dealership. He was tall with graying temples and had a booming laugh that could fill a room. On good days, he would bring home small gifts and take us out for ice cream. On bad days, which became more frequent as I got older, he would lock himself in his study with a bottle of whiskey, muttering about bills and ungrateful customers. My mother Sandra was a part-time receptionist at a dental office. She had been beautiful once with the same auburn hair I inherited, but years of stress had etched permanent worry lines around her eyes. She was the peacekeeper of the family, always smoothing things over when Dad had one of his outbursts. "Your father works so hard for this family," she would tell me whenever I questioned his behavior. "We need to support him." Then there was my younger sister, Tiffany. At 19, she was everything I wasn't. Outgoing, popular, and somehow exempt from the expectations placed on me. While I worked part-time jobs since I was 16, Tiffany focused on cheerleading and social media. She had our parents wrapped around her finger, especially Dad, who called her his princess, and rarely denied her anything. Our house itself was a character in our family story. The once charming colonial needed a new roof, the basement flooded every spring, and the heating system made concerning noises during winter. Yet somehow there was always money for Tiffany's cheer camp or Mom's weekend getaways with her friends. I had always been the responsible one, the good daughter. When I was 12, I started babysitting for neighbors. By 16, I was working weekends at the local grocery store while maintaining straight A's. Senior year of high school, I landed a prestigious scholarship that covered 70% of my tuition at State University. My parents seemed proud, but their first question was whether I would still be able to work while studying. College was a balancing act of classes. My job at the campus bookstore, and later an accounting internship that barely paid enough for textbooks. I took out student loans for the remaining 30% of tuition, determined to graduate with minimal debt. My schedule left little time for the typical college experience. While other students attended football games and fraternity parties, I was either studying or working. Despite this, I built a small circle of friends. Jessica, my roommate sophomore year, became my closest confidant. She came from a wealthy family in Connecticut, but never made me feel less than. She noticed things like how I would count change before buying coffee, or how I always checked my bank account before agreeing to go out for dinner. "You know you work harder than anyone I know," she told me once while we were studying late in our dorm room. "Your parents must be so proud." I remember smiling thinly and changing the subject. The truth was complicated. My parents did seem proud when I made the dean's list or secured competitive internships, but their pride always came with an expectation. It started small. Mom calling to ask if I could help out with Tiffany's prom dress. Dad mentioning that the water heater broke and they were short a few $100s. Each request came with promises to pay me back, with reminders of all they had sacrificed for my education, with subtle guilt trips about how Tiffany would be disappointed if she couldn't have what her friends had. I kept a spreadsheet. By the end of my freshman year, they owed me $3,000. By sophomore year, it was $7,000. Junior year, I stopped counting but kept sending money home. I worked extra shifts, ate ramen more often than not, and watched my savings account dwindle. Despite this, I maintained hope. I believed that once I graduated and secured a full-time position, things would change. I would help my parents get their finances in order. Maybe they would finally be proud of me without wanting something in return. Maybe Tiffany would see that hard work paid off. Maybe we could be the family I always wished we were. My final semester, I accepted a job offer from Wilson Accounting Partners, a respected firm in our city. The starting salary was more than my parents made combined. I could finally breathe. I planned to help my family, yes, but also start building my own life. I would find an apartment build, an emergency fund, start paying off my student loans. For once, I allowed myself to dream about my future. The night before graduation, I called home. Mom answered, and I could hear the television blaring in the background. I told her my exciting news about the job offer. "That's nice, honey," she said, her attention clearly elsewhere. "Listen, can you bring home some of those mini shampoos from your hotel? And do you think you could stop at the store on your way here tomorrow? We need some things for the house." That was the moment I should have seen it, the warning sign. But I was too caught up in my own milestone to recognize what was coming. I had been planning my graduation celebration for months. Between final exams and job interviews, I researched restaurants, created guest lists, and saved enough to treat everyone to a nice dinner. I chose Carlino's, an Italian place downtown with string lights on the patio and homemade pasta that reminded me of the one fancy dinner my grandmother had taken me to before she passed away. The morning of graduation dawned bright and clear. I curled my hair, applied makeup with a steadier hand than my racing heart should have allowed, and slipped into the dress I had splurged on 3 months before, a deep emerald that Jessica assured me brought out my eyes. Under my black graduation gown, it was my secret armor. Today I was a success story. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of speeches about future potential and changing the world. When they called my name, Callie Marie Anderson, Bachelor of Science in Accounting, summa cum laude, I heard Jessica cheer from somewhere in the sea of identical black caps. I searched the audience for my family as I crossed the stage, finally spotting them 3/4 of the way back. Tiffany was on her phone. Mom was smiling, at least. Dad was checking his watch. Afterward, in the chaos of finding each other amidst thousands of graduates and their families, I finally located them near the science building. "There she is," the graduate, Dad said, giving me a quick side hug that smelled of the cologne I had given him last Christmas. "We are so proud, honey," Mom added, straightening my cap, though the ceremony was over. Tiffany looked up from her phone long enough to say, "Can we go eat now? I am literally starving." No card, no gift, not even a bouquet of grocery store flowers. I pushed down my disappointment. They had come after all. That was enough. "Yes, let's head to Carlino's," I said brightly. I made reservations for 6 o'clock. Jessica and her parents met us at the restaurant. The contrast was immediate and uncomfortable. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett hugged me warmly, presenting me with a beautiful leather portfolio embossed with my initials and a card that I knew would contain a thoughtful note and probably a check. They asked intelligent questions about my new job and genuinely listened to my answers. "We always knew Callie was special," Mrs. Bennett told my mother as we were seated at our table on the patio. "Jessica says she is the hardest worker in their friend group." My mother smiled tightly. "Yes, Callie has always been very focused." The waiter brought menus and took drink orders. I had reserved a table for 7, but at the last minute my parents had asked if Tiffany's friend Amber could join us. Now I watched as they giggled together, taking selfies with the decorative wine bottles. "This place is kind of basic," I heard Tiffany whisper just loud enough for me to hear. Amber's sister had her graduation dinner at Le Chateau. I pretended not to hear, focusing instead on the menu, though I had already decided what to order weeks ago. The chicken parmesan here was legendary. "Everything looks so expensive," my father commented, flipping through the menu with a frown. "I thought we were just getting pizza or something." "It's my treat, Dad," I reminded him. "I wanted to do something special." He grunted in response, and I felt the familiar sting of disappointment. Jessica caught my eye across the table and gave me a subtle thumbs up. At least someone understood what today meant to me. The evening progressed with awkward small talk between my family and Jessica's. We ordered appetizers, entrees, and the waiter brought a complimentary tiramisu with "Congratulations, graduate" written in chocolate around the plate. I was just beginning to relax when my father cleared his throat and tapped his water glass with his fork. "I would like to make a toast," he announced, standing up. All conversation ceased. My heart lifted. Maybe he had just been waiting for the right moment to express how proud he was. "To Callie," he began, raising his glass, "who has finally finished her education and entered the real world." So far, so good. I smiled, feeling a blush rise to my cheeks. "And who," he continued, his smile shifting into something different, something that made my stomach clench, "is now officially old enough to pay rent or get out." He laughed, actually laughed, as if he had told a clever joke. The table fell silent. Jessica's parents exchanged glances. Jessica herself stared at my father in disbelief. "William," my mother said, but she was smiling too, like they were sharing a private joke at my expense. What Dad shrugged, still standing. "She has a fancy degree and a job now. Time to contribute to the household or find her own place. That is how the real world works." Tiffany snickered, nudging Amber. "Told you," she whispered. "I have been contributing," I said quietly, the words escaping before I could stop them. "What was that, Dad?" asked, his smile fading slightly. "Nothing," I said, forcing my lips into a smile that felt like it might shatter my face. "Thank you for the toast, Dad." The moment passed. Conversation resumed, strained and artificial. Jessica kept shooting me concerned glances. Her father ordered another round of drinks. My appetizer remained untouched as my appetite had vanished entirely. As the evening wound down and the bill came, I reached for it automatically. $470 for 7 people. I handed over my credit card without blinking, though it represented nearly a full week of work at my campus job. "Such a generous daughter you have," Mrs. Bennett commented to my mother. "Yes," Mom replied, patting my hand absently. "Callie has always been good with money, not like the rest of us." She laughed and Dad joined in. Tiffany was already heading for the door, Amber in tow. As we parted ways in the parking lot, Jessica hugged me fiercely. "Call me tomorrow," she whispered. "Something is not right here." I nodded, fighting tears as I watched her leave with her picture-perfect family. In the car on the way home, my parents discussed a vacation they were planning for July. Tiffany chimed in with destinations she preferred. No one asked if I would be joining them. No one mentioned my graduation again. I stared out the window at the passing streetlights, each one illuminating a different future than the one I had imagined that morning. By the time we pulled into our driveway, I had made a decision. That night, I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars my father had put on the ceiling when I was 9. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had spent an entire Saturday carefully arranging them into accurate constellations, telling me stories about each one. "This is Cassiopeia," he had said, pointing to a W shape. "She was beautiful, but vain." That was the father I had been chasing my entire life, the one who cared enough to get the constellations right. My phone buzzed with messages from friends congratulating me on graduation. Jessica had sent a longer text. "Your parents were weird tonight. What was that rent comment about? Are you okay? Call me if you need to talk." I couldn't bring myself to respond to anyone. What would I say? That my graduation dinner had confirmed what I had suspected for years, that my family saw me as an ATM with legs, that despite all my hard work, all I was worth to them was a monthly rent check. Tears slid silently down my temples and into my hair. I didn't bother wiping them away. For once, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my disappointment and anger. Every time I had skipped meals to send money home. Every holiday I had worked while Tiffany posted pictures of family celebrations. Every late night I had spent studying while simultaneously worrying about whether the electric bill would get paid. The more I thought about it, the more certain questions rose to the surface. If money was so tight that I needed to pay rent, why had Tiffany gotten a new car for her 19th birthday? If the household needed my financial contribution, why had Mom gone on a spa weekend with her friends just last month? If Dad was struggling at work, why had he mentioned buying a boat to his friend on the phone last week? Sleep evaded me as these questions tumbled through my mind. Around 3 in the morning, I made a decision. I needed answers. Real ones. I slipped out of bed and down the hallway to my father's study. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room and the distant sound of my father's snoring. The door to the study creaked slightly as I opened it, and I froze, listening for any change in the household rhythm. Nothing. I knew what I was looking for. Dad kept a filing cabinet in the corner of his study. When I was younger, it had been strictly off limits. Adult paperwork, he would say, if I ever wandered too close to it. Now I pulled open the middle drawer, which took some effort as it stuck slightly. Inside were folders labeled with various categories: auto, house, medical, miscellaneous. I pulled out house first, finding mortgage statements that made my stomach drop. The amount was nearly double what Dad had told me when asking for help with payments. Next came credit card statements showing balances in the tens of thousands. Store cards from every major department store. A home equity line of credit I had never known existed. But it was the folder labeled Callie that stopped my heart. Inside were records of every transfer I had ever made to their account. But instead of showing payments toward the mortgage or utilities, as I had been told there were corresponding withdrawals, money transferred to TJ's boutique where Tiffany shopped, a payment to Sunset Cruise Lines, checks written to Sandra Anderson with the memo line blank. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything. I wasn't sure what I would do with this evidence, but I knew I needed to document it. As I was replacing the folders, my eye caught another labeled Tiffany Education. Curious, I opened it to find a fully funded college savings account with over $50,000. An account opened the same year I had taken out my first student loan. I closed the cabinet and returned to my room, my mind reeling with betrayal. Sleep was impossible now. Instead, I opened my laptop and began searching for apartments in the city near my new job. The rents were high as I expected, but with my new salary, I could make it work. I would need to be frugal, especially while paying off student loans, but it was doable. As dawn broke, I texted Jessica. "Need to talk. Can I come over this morning?" She replied immediately. "Of course. Mom made cinnamon rolls." 2 hours later, I sat at the Bennett's kitchen island, a barely touched cinnamon roll in front of me, telling Jessica everything. The years of financial support, the discoveries in the filing cabinet, the college fund that could have spared me years of working through school. "I knew something was off," Jessica said, her expression. "A mixture of anger and sympathy, the way they talked about money around you. The comments your mom would make when you bought something for yourself, like you were being extravagant buying a $10 mascara." Mrs. Bennett, who had been quietly listening from the doorway, came to sit beside me. "Honey, what they are doing isn't just unfair, it is financial abuse." The term hit me like a physical blow. Abuse. I had never considered it that way, but of course, that's exactly what it was. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice small. "You get out," Jessica said firmly. "You were already planning to move for your new job. Accelerate those plans." "But finding an apartment takes time," I protested, "and I do not start my job for another 3 weeks." Mrs. Bennett touched my hand gently. "You know our rental property downtown is vacant right now. The last tenants moved out last month and we haven't listed it yet. It is small, just a 1-bedroom, but it's furnished and the location is good." I stared at her in disbelief. "You want to rent to me?" "We would be happy to," she said, "and the first month can be a graduation gift." Fresh tears sprang to my eyes, but these were different from the ones I had shed the night before. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of possibility. "I do not know what to say," I whispered. "Say yes," Jessica urged, "and then we can go shopping for whatever else you need. A fresh start." A fresh start. The words echoed in my mind, filling me with a mixture of excitement and fear. Could I really do this? Cut financial ties with my family and start over? As if reading my thoughts, Mrs. Bennett added, "Setting boundaries doesn't mean you do not love them, Callie. It means you love yourself too." That afternoon, I toured the Bennett's rental property, a cozy apartment above an old bookstore. Hardwood floors, a small balcony overlooking a park, built-in bookshelves filled with light from a large window. It was perfect. By evening, I had signed a lease agreement, and Jessica had helped me create a budget for my new independent life. For the first time since my father's toast, I felt like I could breathe again. But the hardest part was still to come. I had to go home and face my family with my decision. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. While my family still slept, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop finalizing my plan. I had already secured housing thanks to the Bennetts, but there was still much to do before I could truly be independent. First, I checked my credit score. Despite helping my family financially, I had been careful to build good credit during college, paying my small credit card on time and keeping my student loans in order. My score was 730, which the website labeled as very good. One small victory. Next, I created a detailed budget spreadsheet. My starting salary at Wilson Accounting Partners would be $62,000 a year. After taxes, health insurance, and my 401 Kelvin's contribution, I calculated my monthly take-home pay. Then I subtracted rent, utilities, student loan payments, groceries, transportation costs, and an emergency fund contribution. What remained wasn't extravagant, but it was mine. I made a list of essential items I would need for my new place. The Bennett's apartment came with basic furniture, but I still needed kitchenware, bathroom supplies, and some personal touches to make it feel like home. Jessica had already volunteered to help me shop later that week. Around 9 o'clock, I heard movement upstairs. My family was waking up. I closed my laptop and took a deep breath, preparing for the day ahead. I wasn't ready to confront them yet. I needed more time to solidify my plans. "Morning, graduate," my mother said, entering the kitchen in her robe. "Any coffee left?" "Fresh pot," I replied, gesturing to the counter. She poured herself a cup and sat across from me. "So have you thought about what your father said last night?" "No, how did you sleep, or what are your plans today?" Straight to business. I shouldn't have been surprised. "I have," I said carefully. "I am actually looking at some options." Her eyebrows rose. "Options? You mean apartments? Because you know rent in the city is outrageous. It makes much more sense for you to stay here and commute." My new job was 45 minutes from our house without traffic. During rush hour, it would be at least an hour and a half each way. But that wasn't the point. "I am considering all possibilities," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Mom sipped her coffee, studying me over the rim of her mug. "Your father was thinking around $800 a month would be fair for rent here. That includes utilities and food, of course. You would be saving a fortune compared to city prices." $800. More than I had been sending them monthly throughout college. And now they wanted to formalize the arrangement to put a label on the financial support I had been providing for years. The audacity was breathtaking. "I will think about it," I said, standing up. "I am meeting Jessica for lunch. I will be back later." I wasn't actually meeting Jessica until the afternoon, but I needed to escape. I grabbed my keys and headed out before my mother could ask any more questions or worse, request money for something. I drove to a small cafe downtown where I had studied during college breaks. The owner, Maria, greeted me with a warm smile. "The graduate returns. Congratulations, Callie. Coffee is on the house today." I thanked her and settled into my favorite corner table. This place had been a sanctuary during difficult times. I had spent countless hours here studying when the tension at home became too much, or when I needed to stretch my food budget with an unlimited refill coffee. While sipping my latte, I made a list of all the accounts and services I shared with my family: cell phone plans, streaming services, Amazon Prime, car insurance. One by one, I researched how to separate each one, creating new accounts in my name only. It would increase my monthly expenses, but independence had its price. Next, I called the utility companies for the Bennett's apartment to set up service in my name starting the following week. Electricity, water, internet. Each call made my plan more concrete, more real. Around noon, I headed to the bank. I had maintained a separate account for years, but I knew from my research last night that my parents had access to it as joint account holders, a relic from when they had set it up for me as a teenager. It was time to change that. The bank representative, a kind woman named Tammy, helped me open a new account at a different bank entirely. I transferred most of my funds, leaving just enough in the old account to avoid fees until I could close it completely. "Is there anything wrong with your current account?" Tammy asked as she processed the paperwork. "No," I said. "Just time for a fresh start." After the bank, I met Jessica at the mall as planned. She hugged me tightly when she saw me. "How are you holding up?" she asked, linking her arm through mine. "Better than expected," I admitted. "I have been productive today." We spent the next few hours gathering essentials for my new apartment: towels, sheets, kitchen basics. Jessica insisted on buying me a housewarming gift, a beautiful lamp for my bedside table. "For late-night reading in your very own place," she said with a smile. By the time we finished shopping, my car was full and my heart was lighter. The physical act of acquiring items for my new home made the transition feel real and positive rather than scary. "When are you going to tell them?" Jessica asked as we loaded the last bags into my trunk. "Tomorrow," I decided. I want one more night to make sure everything is in order. That evening, I returned home to find my family in the living room watching a reality show. No one asked where I had been all day. Tiffany barely looked up from her phone when I entered. I went straight to my room and began quietly sorting through my belongings, deciding what to take and what to leave behind. Clothes, books, and personal mementos would come with me. Furniture and larger items would stay. I worked methodically, packing essential items into suitcases I could easily transport tomorrow. As I sorted through my desk, I found an old photo of my family at the beach. I must have been about 10 Tiffany 6. Dad was building a sandcastle with me, while Mom and Tiffany posed with ice cream cones. We all looked happy. I stared at the photo for a long moment before placing it in my take pile, a reminder of what had been or what I had hoped could be. By midnight, most of my packing was done. I had managed to condense my life into 3 suitcases and several boxes. Tomorrow would be moving day. Tomorrow, everything would change. I fell asleep planning what I would say, rehearsing the words that would set me free. The next morning dawned bright and clear, as if the universe was endorsing my decision. I woke early, finished packing the last of my belongings, and prepared myself for the confrontation ahead. Jessica had offered to come with her father's truck to help me move, and they would arrive at 11. That gave me 2 hours to break the news to my family. I found them at the breakfast table, a rare occurrence as we usually ate at different times. Dad was reading something on his tablet, Mom was making a shopping list, and Tiffany was texting a half-eaten piece of toast abandoned beside her. "Morning," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. My hands were steady despite the nervous energy coursing through me. "You were busy yesterday," Mom commented without looking up. "Your father and I were thinking we could sit down this afternoon and discuss the rent situation." "Actually," I said, taking a seat at the table, "I wanted to talk to all of you about that now." Something in my tone must have caught their attention because all 3 of them looked up. "I have made a decision about my living situation." I continued, my voice stronger than I expected. "I am moving out today." There was a moment of stunned silence, then Dad laughed. "Today, do not be ridiculous, Callie. Finding an apartment takes time. Applications, credit checks, deposits. It is all taken care of," I said calmly. "I have signed a lease, set up utilities, and packed my things. Jessica and her father are coming at 11 to help me move." The laughter died on my father's face. "You cannot be serious. Where exactly are you moving to?" "An apartment downtown, close to my new job." "Downtown," Mom interjected. "Those places cost a fortune, Callie. This is exactly why you should stay here and save money." Tiffany had put down her phone and was watching with wide eyes, sensing the tension building in the room. "I can afford it," I said. "I have created a budget based on my new salary and it works out fine." Dad's expression darkened. "So you would rather throw money away on rent than help your family? After all we have done for you." And there it was, the guilt trip, the manipulation. But this time it didn't work. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad?" I asked quietly. He blinked, caught off guard by the direct question. "We raised you, put a roof over your head, food on the table." "Yes, you did the legal minimum required of parents," I acknowledged. "But did you pay for my education, my books, my car insurance, my phone bill for the past 4 years?" Silence fell over the table. Mom suddenly became very interested in her coffee cup. "I found the records." I continued, my voice still calm. "Every transfer I made, every time you told me it was for the mortgage or utilities or some emergency, I know where that money really went." Dad's face flushed. "You had no right to go through my files. You had no right to lie to me for years," I countered. "You had no right to take money from me for essentials while spending on luxuries. You had no right to make me work through college while setting up a college fund for Tiffany." Tiffany gasped. "What college fund?" At least that part had been kept from her, too. Small consolation. "This is absurd," Dad sputtered. "We had some financial difficulties. Every family does. You helped out because you are part of this family." "Helped out," I repeated, finally allowing some emotion into my voice. "I have been paying bills since I was 18. I worked 30 hours a week while taking full course loads. I ate ramen for dinner so I could send you money for what I thought was keeping the lights on, only to find out you were using it for cruises and shopping sprees." Mom had gone pale. "It wasn't like that, Callie. We just moved some money around sometimes. Everything was so tight. Tight enough for Dad to be looking at boats, tight enough for your spa weekends, tight enough for Tiffany's new car. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos I had taken of their financial records. I am an accounting major. I can read a financial statement. There was no emergency. There was just poor planning and the expectation that I would bail you out. Dad pushed back from the table, standing abruptly. I will not be spoken to this way in my own house. You have no idea the sacrifices we have made. And you have no idea the sacrifices I have made, I replied, standing as well. But it ends today. I am moving out and I am cutting off financial support. Completely. The color drained from both my parents' faces. Tiffany looked back and forth between us, confusion and alarm warring on her features. You cannot just leave, Mom said, her voice rising in panic. What about the mortgage payment due next week? What about Tiffany's tuition deposit? I shook my head. Not my responsibility anymore. You both have jobs. You have equity in this house. You have options that do not involve exploiting your daughter. This is how you repay us, Dad demanded, his voice thunderous. After everything, this is how I start respecting myself, I corrected him, something I should have done years ago. The doorbell rang, signaling Jessica's arrival. Perfect timing. That is my ride, I said. I will get my things. Callie, wait, Mom called, following me toward the stairs. We can work something out. Maybe we were asking too much with the rent. You could stay for free until you save up a proper deposit. I stopped and turned to face her. It is not about the money, Mom. It is about the lies, the manipulation. The fact that at my graduation dinner, the only thing Dad could think to say was how I could start paying him more. Tears filled her eyes. We do love you, Callie. We are proud of you. Love shouldn't come with an invoice, I said softly. And real pride doesn't wait for a paycheck. I continued up the stairs to retrieve my suitcases, leaving her standing at the bottom. When I came back down, Jessica was in the foyer, looking uncomfortable as my father argued with her. This is a family matter, he was saying. Callie is upset and not thinking clearly. Actually, I have never thought more clearly, I interjected, handing Jessica one of my suitcases. We made several trips to load my belongings into Mr. Bennett's truck. My family watched from the doorway, a tableau of shock and disbelief. Tiffany had started crying at some point, which surprised me. I hadn't thought she cared that much about my presence in the house. As I carried out the last box, she rushed forward. You cannot just leave, she sobbed. What am I supposed to do? For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. Despite everything, she was my sister and in many ways another victim of our parents' financial irresponsibility. You will figure it out, I told her gently. Maybe get a part-time job, learn to budget, all the things I had to do. But I do not know how, she wailed. Neither did I, until I had to, I replied. You are smarter than they have let you believe. I turned to my parents one last time. I am not doing this to hurt you. I am doing this because it is the only healthy choice for me. I will always be your daughter, but I will not be your bank anymore. Dad's face was a storm cloud. Mom was openly crying now. Tiffany had retreated to stand between them, suddenly looking very young and uncertain. When you cannot make ends meet out there in the real world, Dad said coldly, do not come crawling back. I won't need to, I replied. I have been living in the real world for years. You are the ones who have been living in a fantasy. With that, I got into my car and followed the Bennett's truck away from the house I had grown up in, away from the family that had taken so much, and toward a future that was finally completely my own. The first night in my new apartment was surreal. After Jessica and her parents helped me unpack the essentials and left with warm hugs and promises to check in, I stood alone in the middle of my living room, surrounded by boxes and unfamiliar furniture. The silence was profound. No Tiffany's music blaring through the walls. No parents arguing downstairs. Just the distant sounds of downtown traffic and occasionally footsteps from the apartment above. I felt a confusing mixture of liberation and terror. For the first time in my life, I was truly on my own. No one to answer to, but also no one to fall back on. I made a simple dinner of pasta and sauce, eating at my new kitchen counter while looking out at the city lights. My city now. The next few days were a blur of settling in and preparing for my new job. I arranged my clothes in the small but adequate closet. I organized my kitchen with the new items Jessica had helped me select. I set up my desk by the window overlooking the park, arranging my laptop and books just so. With each item I unpacked, each decision I made about where things should go, I reclaimed another piece of myself. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from my parents. Guilt trips from Mom, I cannot believe you would abandon your family like this. Threats from Dad. You will regret this decision when rent is due. Tearful pleas from Tiffany, everything is awful here without you. I responded minimally, maintaining boundaries while not cutting contact completely. I am fine. The apartment is nice. Starting my new job soon. Nothing that could be twisted into an opening for financial requests. The first day at Wilson Accounting Partners arrived. I dressed carefully in my new professional clothes, a far cry from the discount store outfits I had worn through college. The firm occupied 3 floors of a sleek downtown building, and my office, though small, had a window, and my name on the door, Callie Anderson, Junior Accountant. My supervisor, Eleanor Wright, was a poised woman in her 50s who had worked her way up from receptionist to senior partner. She took me under her wing, immediately assigning me to interesting projects and including me in client meetings where most junior staff would be left behind. You have a natural talent for this work, she told me, after I identified a significant tax-saving opportunity for a client during my second week. And more importantly, you have integrity. That is rare and valuable. Integrity. The word resonated with me in a way few compliments ever had, perhaps because it was what I had been trying to reclaim by leaving home. As weeks passed, I developed a routine. Work during the day, quiet evenings in my apartment reading, or watching shows. I chose weekend brunches with Jessica when our schedules aligned. I joined a yoga studio 2 blocks from my building and started attending classes 3 mornings a week before work. Slowly, I was building a life that reflected my values rather than someone else's expectations. My first paycheck arrived with a sense of ceremony. I sat at my desk, staring at the direct deposit notification. More money than I had ever had at one time. All mine. I followed my carefully constructed budget, paying my rent and utilities first, then my student loan payment, then setting aside amounts for groceries, transportation, and savings. The remainder was modest but felt like a fortune. I bought myself a small piece of art for my living room, a watercolor of a woman standing at a crossroads. It seemed fitting. About a month after I moved out, the first real crisis hit back at my family home. Mom called on a Tuesday evening, her voice tight with panic. The mortgage company called, she said without preamble. We are 2 months behind and they are threatening foreclosure. I closed my eyes, leaning against my kitchen counter. I am sorry to hear that. What are you and Dad planning to do? The silence on the other end spoke volumes. She had been expecting me to offer money. Callie, you know we do not have the funds right now, she finally said. Your father's commission has been down and with you not helping anymore. Mom, I interrupted gently, but firmly, you and Dad both work full-time. The mortgage on that house should be manageable with your combined incomes. If it is not, you might need to consider downsizing. Downsizing, she repeated as if I had suggested they move to Mars. This is our home, Callie. This is where you grew up. Yes, and I have wonderful memories here, I acknowledged. But if you cannot afford it without my income, then it is not a sustainable situation. I cannot believe how cold you have become, she said, her voice hardening. This is your family. I am not being cold, I corrected her. I am being realistic. I am happy to help you create a budget if you would like. I can look at your expenses and suggest places to cut back, but I will not be sending money anymore. She hung up without another word. 2 days later, Dad called. This was unusual, as he rarely initiated contact directly. Your mother is upset, he said gruffly. I know, I replied. I offered to help with budgeting advice, but I think that is not what she wanted. He cleared his throat. Things are tight right now, Callie. Really tight. Tiffany needs textbooks for the semester. The car needs repairs. We might lose the house. The familiar pressure began building in my chest, the instinctive urge to fix their problems, to be the good daughter. I took a deep breath. Dad, I make $62,000 a year. That is a good salary for a new graduate, but it is not enough to support myself and all of you. You and Mom make more than that combined. This is about choices and priorities. So you are choosing yourself over your family, he said bitterly. I am choosing to let you and Mom be adults who manage your own finances, I corrected him. Just like you told me I needed to be at my graduation dinner. After that conversation, communication became sparse. Occasional text messages, brief calls on holidays. I heard through Jessica, whose mother kept in touch with neighborhood gossip, that changes were happening at my parents' house. Dad's boat plans had been abandoned. Mom had picked up extra shifts at the dental office. Tiffany had gotten a part-time job at the mall, something that would have been unthinkable a few months earlier. Then came the real shock. 3 months after I moved out, Jessica forwarded me a real estate listing. My childhood home was on the market. "Did you know about this?" she texted alongside the listing. I didn't. No one had told me. I felt a complicated surge of emotions. Sadness for the loss of the house where I had grown up. Guilt that my departure had perhaps accelerated this outcome. But also a sense of vindication. My parents were finally facing reality. That evening, Tiffany called me for the first time since I had left. "They are selling the house," she said without greeting, "and making me share an apartment with them. It is completely unfair." "I heard about the house," I said carefully. "How are you feeling about it?" She sniffled. "It sucks, and it is your fault. If you had stayed and helped with bills, none of this would be happening." "Tiffany," I said gently, "this was going to happen eventually. The way Mom and Dad were managing money wasn't sustainable. It is better to downsize now than face foreclosure later." "Easy for you to say from your fancy apartment," she shot back. "My apartment is small and affordable," I corrected her. "I live within my means. That is all I am suggesting everyone should do." There was a pause then. Her voice came again, smaller this time. "I had to drop out of the cheerleading team. We cannot afford the fees anymore." "I am sorry," I said, and I meant it. "That must be hard." "Everything is hard now," she admitted. "Mom cries a lot. Dad is angry all the time. I hate my job at the mall. The customers are awful." For the first time, I felt a genuine connection with my sister. She was experiencing what I had lived with for years, the stress of financial instability, the reality of having to work for what you want. "It gets easier," I told her. "And you learn things about yourself, like how strong you actually are." "I am not strong like you," she said quietly. "You are stronger than you think," I replied. "And Tiffany, if you ever want help creating a budget or learning about saving money, I am here. Not to give money, but to teach you what I know." After we hung up, I stood on my small balcony watching the sunset over the city. Another step in this journey of separation and growth. Not a clean break, but a slow, sometimes painful evolution toward healthier relationships. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. 6 months passed in a blur of seasons-changing projects at work and slowly building a life that was truly my own. Autumn leaves gave way to winter snow, which melted into spring blossoms in the park outside my window. My apartment had transformed from a strange new space to a true sanctuary filled with books, plants, and small treasures I had carefully selected. Each object represented a choice made for myself, not out of obligation or guilt. At work, my reputation grew steadily. Eleanor had assigned me to several high-profile clients, trusting me with responsibilities usually reserved for more experienced accountants. When performance reviews came around, I received the highest rating among junior staff, along with a modest but meaningful raise. "You have a gift for this work," Eleanor told me. "But more importantly, you have grit. Not everyone does." Grit. Another word that resonated deeply. The quality that had gotten me through college while working and supporting my family. The strength that had allowed me to finally break free from unhealthy patterns. The courage to rebuild from scratch. On a personal level, I had begun to expand my world beyond work and my friendship with Jessica. I joined a book club that met at the bookstore below my apartment. I volunteered as a financial literacy mentor at the local community center, teaching basics of budgeting and saving to young adults. I even started dating occasionally, something I had never had time for in college. Throughout these months, contact with my family remained limited but not completely severed. They had indeed sold the house and moved to a 3-bedroom apartment in a less expensive neighborhood. Dad had taken a second job on weekends. Mom had been promoted to office manager at the dental practice. Tiffany had continued her part-time job at the mall and was taking classes at the community college, having deferred her university acceptance due to financial constraints. These changes weren't easy for them. Every conversation included some mention of struggle or sacrifice. But beneath the complaints, I detected something else developing, a growing resilience. A newfound understanding of cause and effect when it came to financial decisions, small steps toward maturity that had been delayed for too long. Then came the wedding invitation. My cousin Allison was getting married in June, a family gathering that would be impossible to avoid without seeming petty. I confirmed my attendance with a mixture of anticipation and dread. It would be the first time I would see my parents and sister in person since moving out. The day of the wedding arrived warm and clear. I chose my outfit carefully, a sophisticated blue dress that projected confidence and success without seeming flashy. Jessica helped me pick it out, understanding the complicated dynamics I was walking into. "Remember," she said as she hugged me goodbye that morning, "you have nothing to be ashamed of. You made healthy choices for yourself. Hold your head high." The ceremony was beautiful, held in a garden pavilion decorated with spring flowers. I sat toward the back, arriving just in time to avoid extended pre-wedding mingling. After the vows and applause, I made my way to the reception area, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. My mother spotted me first. She had lost weight and her hair was different, styled in a simpler, more practical cut. She hesitated before approaching, uncertainty in her expression. "Callie," she said when she reached me. "You look wonderful." "Thanks, Mom," I replied. "You look good too. I like your hair." An awkward silence fell between us, too many unspoken words crowding the space. "The apartment is working out well," she finally said. "It is closer to work for both of us, and the maintenance is included, which is nice." I nodded, recognizing this as an olive branch of sorts, an acknowledgement that downsizing had some benefits. "How is your place?" she asked. "I love it," I said honestly. "It is small but perfect for me. There is a park across the street where I go running in the mornings." Another pause. Then she surprised me. "I am sorry about your graduation dinner. What your father said. What we both did. It was wrong." The words hit me like a physical force. An apology. Something I had never expected. "Thank you for saying that," I managed, emotion tightening my throat. Dad and Tiffany joined us, then creating a tableau of the family I had left behind. Dad looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper. Tiffany seemed different too, less polished but somehow more substantial. The graduate dad said his attempt at lightness falling flat. Or I guess not so new a graduate anymore. 6 months at Wilson now, I confirmed. "It is going well." "They are lucky to have you," he said, surprising me again. "You always were the smart one." Tiffany rolled her eyes, but without the malice of before. She was the responsible one. "I am catching up, though. Made Dean's List last semester." "That is fantastic," I said, genuinely pleased for her. "Community college is treating you well then." She shrugged. "It is okay. Different than I expected college to be. But I am learning a lot, not just academics." I understood what she meant. She was learning the lessons of independence and hard work that I had mastered years ago. We were directed to our table, then seated together as family, despite the months of separation. Dinner was served, speeches were made, and gradually the initial tension began to ease. We talked about neutral topics, family news, cousin Allison's honeymoon plans. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't the disaster I had feared. During the dancing portion of the evening, my father approached me at the bar where I was getting a glass of water. "Your mother told me she apologized," he said without preamble. "I should do the same. We took advantage of your generosity for years. It wasn't right." I studied his face, searching for the manipulation I had come to expect, but all I saw was tired regret. "No, it wasn't right," I agreed. "But I played my part too. I should have set boundaries sooner." He nodded slowly. "The financial literacy classes are helping. The ones the credit counselor recommended. Wish I had learned that stuff 30 years ago." "It is never too late," I offered. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "That is what the counselor says too." He cleared his throat. "We are doing better now. Not great, but better. Living within our means, like you said." "I am glad to hear that, Dad." "And Tiffany is different. Working has been good for her. She appreciates things more." I smiled. I noticed that. He hesitated, then added, "We are not asking for money. Just to be clear, that is not what this is about." "I know," I said, "and I appreciate that." As the evening wound down, we exchanged contact information again, as if resetting the connection to its factory defaults. Mom hugged me briefly before they left, whispering, "We are proud of you, Callie, really proud." This time, the words felt genuine, untethered from expectations or agenda. In the months that followed, our relationship began a slow, careful rebuilding. Not back to what it had been, which was unhealthy and unbalanced, but towards something new. Occasional family dinners at affordable restaurants where everyone paid their own way. Holiday gatherings with clear expectations set in advance. Brief, friendly phone calls that didn't end in requests or guilt. I maintained my boundaries firmly, but not cruelly. When Tiffany needed help reviewing her resume, I gave my time freely. When Mom asked for advice about negotiating a raise, I shared what I had learned. When Dad wanted to discuss investment options for the small amount he had finally managed to save, I pointed him toward reputable resources. What I didn't give was money, not because I couldn't afford to help occasionally, but because doing so would have undermined the important lessons they were finally learning. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them solve their own problems. A year after moving out, I sat on my balcony one evening, watching the sunset and reflecting on how much had changed. I had been promoted at work. I had started taking graduate courses in financial planning. I had made new friends and even begun a promising relationship with Michael, a kind architect I had met through my book club. My phone buzzed with a text from Tiffany. Guess who got a scholarship for fall semester? This girl first in the family. I smiled, typing back my congratulations. She was right. Neither our parents nor I had received scholarships beyond my partial one. Tiffany had achieved something uniquely her own, not through family connections or guilt trips, but through genuine effort and merit. Later that night, as I prepared for bed in the peaceful apartment that had become a true home, I thought about the many lessons this year had taught me. That love without boundaries isn't really love at all. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. That financial independence isn't just about money, but about the freedom to make choices based on your values rather than your fears. Most importantly, I had learned that breaking unhealthy patterns doesn't mean breaking family bonds forever. It means creating space for new, healthier connections to form. Ones based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. On genuine care rather than obligation. I had discovered that standing firm in my worth didn't make me selfish. It made me whole. And from that wholeness, I could offer authentic generosity, the kind that lifts others up rather than enabling their dependence. As I drifted toward sleep, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy, and it wasn't over. There would be more family complications, more difficult conversations, more boundaries to maintain. But I had found my footing on solid ground. I had become the author of my own story rather than a supporting character in someone else's. Sometimes the greatest act of love, both for yourself and others, is simply having the courage to say enough, to recognize that you deserve more than to be valued for what you can provide. To understand that true family supports your growth rather than stunting it for their convenience. This is the lesson I carry forward each day, and it has made all the difference. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? What helped you stay strong when guilt or old patterns tried to pull you back? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, you deserve to be valued for who you are, not just what you can give. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage on your own path to healthy relationships and self-worth.